My name is Emma. I lived a quiet life with my grandmother, Mabel, in a small, peaceful town. I didn't have much in terms of family. It was just me and Mabel against the world. Then I met Robert. He was charming, handsome, and caring. Or at least, that's what I thought initially. Robert came into my life like a fresh breeze. He was the kind of guy everyone liked instantly. He had a nice job, a lot of money, and he knew how to make me laugh. He would shower me with attention and make me feel like I was the only person in the world that mattered to him. "I've never met anyone like you, Emma," he used to say, looking deep into my eyes. "I feel the same, Robert. You make me so happy," I would reply, feeling like the luckiest woman alive. When he found out I was pregnant, he was over the moon and immediately asked me to marry him. "Emma, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" he asked. "I would love to, Robert," I said, tears in my eyes. Our wedding day was beautiful. Mabel cried tears of joy, seeing me so happy. "Oh, Emma, I've never seen you so radiant. I'm so happy for you, my dear," she said as she hugged me tight. The celebration was lavish, with dancing, laughter, and a sea of well-wishers. We promised to love and cherish each other, and I genuinely believed we would. We settled into his sprawling house, and for 2 months, everything was fine. I felt like I was living a dream. Robert was attentive and loving, and I was excited about the new life growing inside me. "I can't wait to meet our little one," I would tell him, my hand on my growing belly. "Me neither, Emma. We are going to be the happiest family," he'd say, smiling. But slowly, this dream began to fade. Robert began to come home late, and sometimes wouldn't come home at all. It felt like he was slipping away, and I couldn't understand why. This is how my story begins. A story of love that turned into pain, a dream that turned into a nightmare. But it is also a story of hope and the strength that can be found in the darkest times. And I'm here to tell it, in my own words, just the way it happened. In the beginning, life with Robert seemed perfect. But after a few months, I started to notice small changes. He'd stay out late, come home at odd hours, and sometimes not come home at all. One day, when he came home late, I decided to ask him about it. "Robert, is everything okay? You've been coming home so late recently." "Oh, Emma, it's just work. We've got this new project, and it's been taking up all my time," he said, avoiding my gaze. But the late nights became more frequent. I'd lie awake, worrying, wondering where he could be. The man who had once been so loving and attentive was slowly becoming a stranger. And then there were the calls. He'd get them at all hours and would always leave the room to answer them. "Who was that?" I would ask when he came back. "Just a work call," he'd reply sharply, ending the conversation before it could even begin. The tension was building, and I could feel it. I tried to talk to him, tried to understand what was going on. "Robert, we never talk anymore. What's happening with us?" "Nothing, Emma. Why do you always have to make a big deal out of everything?" he'd snap. I was hurt, lost, and confused. This wasn't the man I had married, the man who had promised to love and cherish me. He was distant, irritable, and secretive. But every time I tried to confront him, he'd get angry, and then, like clockwork, he'd bring flowers and apologize. "I'm so sorry, Emma. I didn't mean to raise my voice. It's just the stress from work. I just want us to be happy, Robert, like we used to be," I'd say, hoping to get through to him. But the apologies were short-lived, and soon enough, the cycle would repeat. It was like living with 2 different people, and I didn't know how much longer I could cope with it. The man I had fallen in love with was disappearing before my eyes, and I felt powerless to stop it. This is the phase where the winds began to shift, where the storm started brewing, unbeknownst to me. The happy dream was transforming into a distressing reality, and I was just beginning to see the signs. Life continued, and so did Robert's strange behavior. He seemed like he was living a double life, one that I wasn't a part of. I was scared and anxious, and I felt a sinking feeling that something was really wrong. One day, Robert rushed off to work, forgetting his phone at home. The device sat there, tempting me, a gateway to the truth I was so desperately seeking. Eventually, I couldn't resist. I picked it up and started going through his messages and calls. What I found was a trail of betrayal and deceit. Messages from different women, plans to meet up, declarations of affection. My heart was pounding, and I felt sick to my stomach. This was not the man I married. This was not the life I had envisioned for us. "Hey, have you seen my phone?" Robert's voice on the home phone brought me back to reality. "You forgot it at home," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm coming back to get it. Don't touch it," he said, sounding alarmed. But it was too late. When he walked in and saw me with his phone, his face turned red with anger. "What the hell are you doing, Emma? I told you not to touch it." "I know about them, Robert. All of them," I shouted back, my voice breaking. "How could you do this to me?" "It's not what you think," he yelled, trying to grab the phone from my hands. We argued, our voices loud and angry. But instead of resolving anything, Robert left the house, leaving me alone, betrayed, and broken. I was shattered, and the happy life I thought we had was just an illusion, a mask that Robert wore to hide his true self. Sitting alone in the silence of our home, the truth staring back at me from the screen of his phone, I felt lost. The love, the promises, the future we had planned, it was all a lie. And I was left to pick up the pieces of my broken heart, wondering if I would ever be able to trust and love again. The mask had been unveiled, revealing a painful reality I wasn't prepared for. My journey had taken a painful turn, and I had to find the strength to face it and move forward. In the wake of my discovery, the atmosphere in the house became tense and unbearable. We barely spoke, and when we did, it ended in an argument. I was living in a constant state of anguish and heartache. One day, one of our arguments escalated quickly. Robert's anger reached a boiling point I had never seen before. He shouted, his face contorted in rage. "Why can't you just mind your own business, Emma? Why do you have to be so nosy?" "How can our marriage be my own business, Robert? You've been lying to me, betraying me," I shouted back, tears streaming down my face. In a sudden fit of rage, Robert lashed out, his fist connecting with my stomach. Pain seared through my body, and I fell to the floor, gasping for air. The room spun around me as I clutched my belly, fear and pain mixing into a horrible cocktail. Robert, suddenly realizing what he had done, called an ambulance, fabricating a story about how I had fallen down the stairs. The paramedics rushed me to the hospital, their faces etched with concern. Once at the hospital, the doctors ran a flurry of tests, their faces grave. Finally, the news came. "I'm very sorry, Emma, but you've lost the baby," the doctor said gently, sorrow in his eyes. The pain was unbearable, a mixture of physical agony and a profound, soul-crushing loss. "I can't believe this is happening," I whispered, tears flowing freely. "I've lost everything. My baby, the tiny life Robert and I had created, was gone. And with it, the last remnants of the love I had felt for him. The pain was deep, a gaping wound in my soul that seemed like it would never heal. A week later, I was discharged from the hospital, a shell of my former self. Robert was there, flowers in hand, smiling as if nothing had happened. "Ready to go home, Emma?" he asked, as if he hadn't destroyed our lives. "I'm not going anywhere with you," I replied coldly, turning away from him. I went back to Mabel's small house, leaving Robert and the pain he had caused behind. I was broken, lost, and grieving, but I was determined to rebuild my life, to find happiness again, even if it seemed like a distant, impossible dream. This chapter of my life was one of profound loss and pain, a darkness I never thought I'd have to face. But it was also the catalyst for change, the push I needed to free myself from the toxic relationship I was in and start anew. Leaving Robert was a difficult decision, but I knew it was the right one. I moved back to my grandmother Mabel's home, a place of love and solace. Her house was small and cozy, filled with memories of my childhood, a stark contrast to the luxurious, hollow home I had shared with Robert. Mabel opened her doors and her heart to me without a second thought. "Oh, my dear, I'm so sorry for what you've been through," she said, enveloping me in a warm hug. "You're safe here." "I don't know what I would do without you, Grandma," I replied, tears in my eyes. "I feel so lost." "We'll get through this together, sweetie," Mabel assured me, holding my hand. "One day at a time." The days that followed were filled with pain and reflection. I would sit with Mabel, talking about life, love, and loss. She would share stories of her own struggles, her own heartaches, giving me strength and hope. "I've been through tough times too, Emma," she said one day, a distant look in her eyes. "But I learned that pain is a part of life, and we can't let it define us." "You're right, Grandma," I said, squeezing her hand. "I have to be strong, for myself and for the baby I lost." I started to rebuild my life, slowly and painfully. The safety and love of Mabel's home were the nurturing soil I needed to regrow my roots. I began to heal, to learn to live again, away from the shadows of betrayal and violence. Robert tried to reach out several times, sending flowers, letters filled with empty apologies and promises to change. "Emma, please, let's talk about this," he pleaded over the phone one day. "I can change, I promise." "I don't want your apologies, Robert," I said firmly. "You've caused enough pain. I want you to leave me alone." "Emma, don't do this. I love you. We can start over," he insisted, desperation in his voice. "There is no us, Robert. There never was," I replied, hanging up the phone. I severed all ties with him, focusing on my healing and my future. Mabel was my rock, supporting me every step of the way, reminding me of my worth and my strength. Returning to my roots, to the loving embrace of my grandmother, was the balm my wounded soul needed. It was a journey of rediscovery, of learning to love and trust again, and I was determined to emerge from it stronger and wiser. While I was staying with Mabel, healing from the trauma, I knew I couldn't let Robert just walk away without facing the consequences of his actions. I decided to fight back, to seek justice for myself and my lost child. I reached out to an organization that helps survivors of domestic violence. "We're here to support you," said Lisa, a counselor at the organization when I first met her. "We'll help you through this every step of the way." "Thank you, Lisa," I replied, feeling a glimmer of hope for the first time in weeks. "I just want him to pay for what he's done." "We'll do everything we can to make sure he does," Lisa assured me. The organization connected me with a lawyer, a kind and determined woman named Sarah. She listened to my story, her face stern and her eyes filled with resolve. "Emma, we're going to fight this. We'll make sure he doesn't hurt you or anyone else again." "I'm scared, Sarah," I admitted. "He's powerful and has a lot of connections." "We have the truth on our side," Sarah responded confidently, "and I promise I'll do everything in my power to protect you." The days leading up to the trial were stressful and exhausting. Robert's lawyer tried to discredit me, painting me as a jealous, unstable wife. "She's just trying to ruin my client's reputation because he wanted a divorce," he claimed in court. "That's not true," I retorted firmly, my voice steady despite the fear and anger boiling inside me. "I loved him, and he betrayed me. He hurt me and our unborn child." The trial was a grueling process, with witnesses, testimonies, and evidence being presented. The jury listened intently, their faces impassive. I felt vulnerable and exposed, but I also felt a burning desire for justice. Finally, the day came when the jury reached a verdict. My heart raced as the foreman stood up, the courtroom hanging on his every word. "We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of domestic violence and involuntary manslaughter." A wave of relief and vindication washed over me. Robert was sentenced to prison, and the court ordered him to pay compensation for the pain and suffering he had caused me. The fight for justice was a difficult and painful journey, but it was also empowering. It gave me a sense of closure and a chance to rebuild my life. The support of Mabel, Lisa, Sarah, and the organization gave me the strength to stand up to Robert, to make him face the consequences of his actions, and to finally start healing from the wounds he had inflicted. After the grueling trial, the final day arrived, the day the jury would present their verdict. I sat in the courtroom, my heart pounding, Mabel's hand tightly clasped in mine. Sarah, my lawyer, was sitting beside me, her face a mask of calm determination. "Whatever happens, Emma," she whispered to me, "know that you fought bravely. You've stood up to him, and that's a victory in itself." The tension in the room was palpable, the silence deafening, as we all waited for the jury to enter. When they finally did, my heart felt like it was going to leap out of my chest. The foreman stood and addressed the court. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Robert Johnson, guilty of all charges." A surge of mixed emotions rushed through me: relief, vindication, sorrow. I turned to Sarah, tears in my eyes. "Thank you, Sarah, for everything." "You deserved justice, Emma," Sarah replied, squeezing my hand. The judge addressed Robert sternly. "Mr. Johnson, you have been found guilty of causing grievous harm and the loss of an innocent life. You will serve your sentence, and I hope you reflect on the pain you've caused." Robert sat there, his face pale, his arrogance finally shattered. He looked at me, a mix of anger and regret in his eyes, but I met his gaze unflinchingly. "You've destroyed our lives, Robert," I said quietly, "but you won't destroy my future." After the verdict, Sarah and I stepped out of the courtroom, the sunlight feeling warm and comforting after the cold tension inside. "Emma, I'm so proud of you," Sarah said, embracing me. "You were strong, and you spoke your truth." "I couldn't have done it without you, Sarah," I responded, tears streaming down my face. "You've helped me find my voice, my strength." "You had it in you all along, Emma," Sarah replied with a smile. "Now, go live your life. You've earned your freedom, your peace." The verdict brought a sense of closure, a chance to finally start rebuilding my life. It was the end of a painful chapter, a chapter filled with betrayal, loss, and fight. But it was also the beginning of a new journey, a journey towards healing, self-discovery, and hopefully, happiness. With the verdict delivered and Robert paying for his deeds, it was time for me to step into a new life, a life free from his shadows. I felt a mixture of relief, sorrow, and a fragile hope. I returned to Mabel's little house, to the warmth and simplicity of my roots. "I'm so proud of you, Emma," Mabel said, wrapping me in a tight hug as I entered the house. "You fought hard, my dear." "I'm just glad it's over, Grandma," I replied, tears filling my eyes. "I can finally start to heal." "You're stronger than you think, Emma," Mabel said, wiping away my tears. "You've been through so much, but look at you, standing tall." "I couldn't have done it without you, Grandma. Your love and support mean everything to me." As days turned into weeks, I started to rebuild my life, piece by piece. I focused on healing and rediscovering myself. I began attending a support group organized by the Domestic Violence Organization, where I met others who had experienced similar traumas. "You're not alone, Emma," said Lisa, as we sat in a circle sharing our stories. "We've all been through our battles, and we're here to support each other." "It's comforting to know that I'm not alone," I replied, "that there are people who understand what I've been through." The group became a sanctuary for me, a place where I could share my fears, my pain, my hopes without judgment. I formed bonds with other survivors, and together we embarked on the journey of healing. "I'm starting to see the light again," I shared with the group one day. "I'm starting to hope, to dream again." "And that's a big step, Emma," Lisa said with a warm smile. "Hold on to that hope. Let it guide you to a new beginning." With time, the pain began to fade, replaced by a newfound strength and a desire to help others. I decided to use my experience to advocate for domestic violence awareness and support. "I want to help others like me," I explained to Lisa one day. "I want to use my voice to make a difference." "You have a powerful story, Emma," Lisa responded, "and I believe you can make a huge impact. We're here to support you in any way we can." The journey was long and painful, but I found my way back to the light. I learned that I was not defined by the abuse I suffered, but by the strength I discovered within myself. I stepped into a new day, a day filled with hope, love, and a resolve to make a difference in the world. It was indeed a new dawn for me, a dawn that promised a life free from shadows and filled with possibilities.